We're spending 22 minutes today with the one, the only George Takei. George, I listen to you on the radio all the time with Howard. I feel like I know you already and know so much about you, but we want to talk about Allegiance and the fact that your Broadway musical is being screened at theaters nationwide.
That's right.
Yeah.
We're very excited about it because, you know, Broadway is wonderful and we reach an enthusiastic audience here. But this story of the internment of Japanese Americans during the Second World War is something that all Americans should know about because there's an important lesson that we can extract from it, and particularly now in this political climate that we live in, when they're talking about Muslim registries. Well, that's what happened with us too 75 years ago. They put together a Japanese-American registry. We're Americans. My mother was born in Sacramento. My father was a San Franciscan. They met and married in Los Angeles, and my siblings and I were born there. And yet, we happen to look like the people that bombed Pearl Harbor.
Right.
And on that basis alone, this country was swept up in war hysteria and racial prejudice. And political leaders got sucked up into that too.
Right.
We had an attorney general in California, the top attorney of the state, who was very ambitious. He wanted to be elected governor of California, and he saw that the single most popular issue at that time, in the early 40s, was the lock up the Japanese. And I'm using the long word for Japanese. It was a shorter three-letter word.
Right.
Lock up the Japanese issue. And he made an amazing statement. The Attorney General of the state of California, mind you, he said, "We have no reports of spying or sabotage or fifth column activities by Japanese Americans." And that is ominous, because the Japanese are inscrutable. You don't know what they're thinking. So it would be prudent to lock them up before we do anything. So for this Attorney General, the absence of evidence was the evidence. And that just inflamed that lock up the Japanese movement that much more.
120,000 people?
120,000 innocent people who had nothing to do with Pearl Harbor, American citizens. And on February 19th, 1942, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, which ordered all Japanese Americans on the West Coast, 120,000 of us, as you said, to be rounded up and put in barbed wire prison camps in some of the most god-awful places in this country.
Your family wound up, what, in the swamps of Arkansas? Yeah. And you were just what, 4 or 5 years old?
5 years old.
5 years old at the time.
I just turned 5, and just a few weeks after my 5th birthday, my parents got me up very early one morning, dressed as my brother, a year younger, my baby sister, not even a year old. We were dressed early in the morning, hurriedly, and my brother and I were told to wait in the living room. And they were packing back in the bedroom. We were gazing out the front window, and we saw 2 soldiers marching up our driveway. They carried rifles with shiny bayonets on top of them. They stomped up the porch and with their fists began banging on our door. That horrible sound resonated throughout the house. My father came out and answered the door, and literally at gunpoint, we were ordered out of our home. My father gave my brother and me little packages of luggage to carry, and we followed him out onto the driveway, and we waited for our mother to come out. And when she finally emerged, she was carrying our baby sister in one arm, a heavy-looking duffel bag in the other, and tears were streaming down her cheeks. I will never be able to forget that terror that morning, seared into my memory.
You were Americans, and then you were a little boy in this camp. What did you make of it when you were little? Was this just life? Did you understand why you were there, or why you had moved, or what was going on in the country?
Well, my father told us that we were going for a long vacation. to a place called Arkansas, which sounded exotic to us. You know, vacation in Arkansas.
Right.
It could have been vacation in Maui, you know. And so we went with our parents. And I thought, you know, everybody went on vacations on trains with all Japanese Americans, with armed soldiers at both ends of each car. It was 4 days and 4 days and 3 nights, my mother kept telling me as a child. And we arrived at a barbed wire prison camp. Right. I remember those fences that confined us, tall sentry towers with machine guns pointed at us. And when I made the night runs from our barrack to the latrine, searchlights followed me. But to this 5-year-old kid, I thought it was nice that they lit the way for me to pee, you know, an innocent child just adjusting to a vacation.
Right. And as an older person, you were able to take that experience and turn it into art and turn it into allegiance. And I've read that you had sort of a casual conversation with somebody at a Broadway show and sort of, in a sense, gave an elevator pitch for what became Allegiance. How long and how hard was it to get that turned into a Broadway show? We were talking before we started rolling tape that this is really a labor of love.
It is, it is. And my legacy project. I've always thought of dramatizing more my parents' story than my story, because I was too young to really understand it. And so I always was planning on making a drama out of it. And we're theater people. If I'm not on stage, I'm in the audience. One night, my husband and I went to an off-Broadway show, Forbidden Broadway, you know, satire on all the Broadway shows. And we were sitting there chit-chatting, and 2 guys came and sat right in front of us. And one of them recognized my voice, turned around and said, "You're George Takei, aren't you?" And we chatted for a little bit.
You get that a lot.
I get that everywhere. At least he didn't ask for a selfie. And then during intermission, we chatted a little bit, and then we walked back to our apartment saying, you know, those guys are really passionate theater lovers. The next night, we went to see Lin-Manuel Miranda's great musical, In the Heights. We walked into the theater. We had aisle seats, and we looked down the aisle, and this time not in front of us, but about 4 or 5 seats removed from us in the same row were those 2 same guys. And, you know, because the seats were occupied, we just waved to them. Fate. It was prophetic. It was meant to be. Right. And the show began. And there was a song in the Heights near the middle of near the end of the first act. The father sings a song called Inutil. It's about a Puerto Rican family. Inutil means useless in Spanish. There's so much that he wants to do for his daughter, a very bright, ambitious young girl. But because of economic circumstances, he can't help her go to college, and he felt useless. And the power of that song took me back to my teenage days, when I had many after-dinner conversations with my father about our internment. I was reading civics books and reading about all the noble ideals of our American democracy, and I couldn't quite reconcile that with what I knew to be my childhood imprisonment. And during those conversations, my father told me about his anguish with 3 young children behind barbed wire fences. He loved us, and he felt so helpless. What kind of life are his children going to have growing up behind those barbed wire fences? It was torturous for him to have lost everything and to be imprisoned with his family. And that song's power got to me right here in my heart. And I'm a weeper. And that's when I start getting all kind of tensed up, Brad's body moves away from me in the seat. But I couldn't help it. It was so moving.
So moving.
And tears were cascading down my cheek.
And that was ultimately what gave us
Well,
Allegiance.
the intermission happened. And so the lights go blazing on, and the two guys are smiling, and they come clambering over knees to talk to me, and they see the tears in my eyes. And they said, why, how did that song hit you so hard? And I told them about my father. And out of that came the discussion. The intermission was too abbreviated, so we went out for drinks afterwards, and we decided to have dinner the next night, and that was the birthplace, a Broadway theater of Allegiance.
Amazing. So you say you're a weeper, and I'm used to hearing you laughing on the radio. And how your relationship with Howard Stern goes way back to 1990. I actually went back to YouTube and listened to your first conversation.
Oh my.
Yeah. I'm trying to tee up the oh my's. But such a long relationship. How did your that first phone call with Howard, how did it evolve into you being, you know, a sometime co-host of the show announcer? 'Cause I
He
know
calls me the official show announcer.
Yes.
I'm not there every week. In fact, I
but
was
you're
gone
there
for
all the time.
I know. It's on tape, and he runs them ad infinitum, yeah.
How did that relationship develop into what it is now?
Well, when you're an actor doing a play in New York, or, you know, I wrote my autobiography, or a couple of other books, you know, you have to obey your publicist and do what he or she tells you to do. And one morning I had this assignment to go to this radio station on Madison Avenue. And so I very dutifully went there, and they asked me to sit and wait. And I was flipping through a magazine, and they had this radio show on in the waiting room. It was the most disgusting conversation. And I said to the guy who was waiting also, sitting next to me, I said, why can't they get some nice music on the air? You know, this conversation is repellent. He said, that's the show we're waiting to go on. And I thought to myself, oh my.
And you know what I wonder too when I listen is, Brad's here today. I think, is Brad listening at home? Is he okay? Is he okay with all of this?
He was not. When I got home, he said, better, I'm home. And silence. Are you home? Are you here? And then I hear sounds from the kitchen. I peek in there, and there he is, silent, fuming.
Still?
Still. It's about, you know, half an hour after the show's over, I came home.
But I mean, still like now, like
no,
this week.
It takes
Or
a
is he used
little
to
bit
it
of
by now?
Going back to our courting days. I took him out to dinner at the Boathouse in Central Park, and he finally started talking to me.
It took that. Huh? Is that where oh my?
I've been using
or
oh my
when did
all
that
my
start?
life. You know, it's a common phrase.
Sure.
You know.
But nobody says it like you do.
Well, there's no one like me.
So there wasn't any one moment or any one interview or any one show or anything where it became a thing?
It's a normal, and I say oh my all the time, you know, when there's a beautiful sunrise, a radiant sunrise, blazing clouds, orange background, it's oh my, you know, or you taste something that's terrible, that look good, and you get a mouthful of it, it's oh my, you know. There are many, many oh my's, and I've been using oh my all my life, the whole range of it. But when you say it once on the Howard Stern show, it becomes your signature, the rascal. Sure. He's played it over and over again, and so people want me to sign autographs to Jack. Oh my, George Takei.
We're going to have you sign our book later, and you know we're going to ask you. Let's talk a little bit about, we'll circle back to Allegiance, but a little bit about the Star Trek days. 50 years since the show. It was only on for 3 seasons. I was surprised to read that, and yet, you know, a phenomenon for decades. Why do you think so? Was it the diversity? Was it that it was this allegory? Why the lasting appeal?
All that. This is the golden anniversary, 50 years.
Unbelievable.
A whole generation, 2 generations were born after that,
Right.
you know, and it's still, a brand new Star Trek movie came out this year,
Sure.
Star Trek Beyond, to celebrate that anniversary. And there is a Star Trek Beyond next year. In 2017, CBS is going to be producing another Star Trek series.
Right.
So, you know, we are living long and prospering. But yes, we were a short-lived television series because of all those things that you talked about. Remember, this was back in the 1960s when the country was turbulent.
Right.
You know, the civil rights movement, you know, African Americans struggling for equality, being resisted with fire hoses and attack dogs. We had a war going on in Southeast Asia that was tearing this country here, the homeland, apart. Those who supported that war and those who opposed it. And there was a fierce battleground here in the United States because of the Vietnam War. We had the Cold War going. 2 great forces, the Soviet Union and the West, glaring at each other, threatening each other with mutual nuclear annihilation.
Right.
And at a time like that, Star Trek came on. Gene Roddenberry, the creator and the visionary, the philosopher of Star Trek, wanted to do something on television that reflected some of that reality of the 1960s, because television was absolute pap at that time. Quiz shows, game shows, cops and robbers, Indians, cowboys and Indians, you know, and had nothing to do with the turbulence of the United States.
Right.
Gene Roddenberry said, we can use science fiction and metaphorically transport us into the future. But at the same time, metaphorically, we can reflect the realities of our current days in science fiction. And so we dealt with all those issues. Certainly diversity was a big issue.
Sure.
And it was probably the first time in television history that we saw a leadership team composed of the diversity that you saw. You know, I remember the very first day of work on Star Trek. We gathered not on a soundstage, but in a conference room for a table read. The script being read for the first time by the cast, all gathered together. And Gene Roddenberry started us off by describing his vision for the show. And then he said, all of us were to represent part of this planet, the diversity of this planet. That's the strength of us. And the captain is going to represent, captain of the starship, James T. Kirk, is going to represent North America. And he will be played by a Canadian, not an American, but a Canadian,
Right.
Bill Shatner from Montreal, Canada. Europe will be represented by a Scottish engineer, Montgomery Scott, and he will be played by another Canadian, Jimmy Doohan from Vancouver, British Columbia. And Africa, that huge continent, will be represented by a black woman. So we're getting gender equality as well. And she's going to be portrayed by an African-American woman, Nichelle Nichols from Robbins, Illinois, who was not only African-American, but part French and part Cherokee, Native American.
Covering all the bases.
So the most American one of us all is the African-American.
Right.
And I was to represent all of diverse Asia. Japanese American me from Los Angeles. And to really underscore diversity, we had a mixed blood first officer, Spock. His mother, and the mixed blood is not biracial. In his case, it's by species. His mother was a humanoid, and his father was from the planet Vulcan. Green-blooded, pointy-eared, supremely logical and intelligent, and absolutely emotionless. So we have, you know, galactic diversity coming together. That fascinated the people. But also, what fascinated the people that found Star Trek as a TV series was our reflection of the turbulence of the United States at that time. And so, generation after generation, as we become much, much more relevant, we have enjoyed this longevity. But, as you say, we were canceled after 3 seasons. I was another diversity besides Asian. I was gay, and I was closeted. And, you know, I had to be closeted because I wanted to work as an actor. I passionately loved my career. But if I came out, if I was truly who I was, I would not have a career. But nevertheless, I was still, you know, nudging and pushing. And I had a private conversation with Gene where I said, there's another issue, LGBT equality, and we're not dealing with that. And Gene said, yes, that's true. We're not dealing with it, and there's a reason for it. And he reminded me that on one episode, we had a white man kiss a black woman. Captain Kirk kissed Uhura. And with that episode, we reached rock bottom in the ratings because the southern stations, Louisiana,
Didn't want to air it.
Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, did not air it at all. And he said, I'm walking a tightrope here. If I am too adventurous, push the envelope a little too vigorously, that's mixing metaphors, tightrope and pushing the envelope, then we might be canceled and I won't be able to make any statement at all.
Right. And yet now, in the new movies, wasn't it revealed that with John Cho playing Sulu, that Sulu is gay, but you weren't thrilled with that.
No, I was not. I was thrilled with the fact that now we can deal with the gay issue, which we could not back in the 60s. But I was not thrilled with the fact that they wanted to change a character that Gene Roddenberry created to what he was not. And I said, at least they told me they wanted to pay tribute to me because of my activism for LGBT equality. And so in honor of me, they were going to turn Sulu straight. And I said, it's not about me. This is the 50th anniversary of Star Trek. This is the year that we should be celebrating Gene Roddenberry because it's his vision, his genius, and his bigness of heart and vision that Star Trek is celebrating its 50th anniversary. So we should pay tribute to him, not change what he did. He created all of us as straight characters. In fact, Sulu had a daughter who became a helmsman as well. And you saw her in Star Trek 7, you know. And so honor Gene. And yes, Gene would love to see a gay character. Why don't you be as creative as Gene would have been, as imaginative as Gene would have been, and create an original gay character with his or her own history in the 23rd century? That would be more exciting. You know, so be venturesome. That's what Gene Roddenberry was. Pay tribute to him. But as it turned out, and I had a long conversation with the director, Justin Lin, and but they didn't do it. And when I saw the movie, it's just a brief, fleeting whisper. Sulu comes back from how many years mission, and there he is at the airport, and there's an Asian man with a little girl, and he goes straight to her and picks her up and kisses and hugs her, and then puts his arm around the guy and walks off. It's, oh, what, 2-3 seconds at the most. They didn't even kiss, although John Cho told me that they did film a kiss, but they felt they had to cut that out. So what was all the hoo-ha about?
I don't know.
Shakespeare said it, sound and fury signifying nothing.
I have 2 last quick questions because I'm supposed to be wrapping up with you. I know you're on a tight schedule today. Might you be in any cameos in any of the future? And there's a whole new iteration of Star Trek movies.
I keep knocking on wood.
Hoping for that? Have you been approached?
I have not been approached.
Okay.
I would love to do it. When JJ was putting together the rebooted movie, about 7, 8 years ago, I heard that he cast Leonard Nimoy for a cameo. And then I got a phone call from his office saying, please have, we'd like to invite you to have breakfast with JJ. And I thought, very interesting. And I went there expectant. And he was, a fascinating guy. Quick thinking, a lot of energy, full of ideas. And I was waiting for him to explore the idea of a cameo. But then he said, I've been looking at a lot of actors, and I wanted to find a Japanese-American actor because I'm Japanese-American, and he wanted to keep that ethnic consistency. But he said, I found another actor who's not Japanese-American, and I wanted to get your feelings on that. And so my heart sank. It's not about a cameo. And he said, I have another actor who I think would do justice to Sulu. And I said, well, is he Asian American? And he said, yes. And I said, don't worry, that's all that matters. And I told him about Gene Roddenberry.
And about that Canadian American Shatner.
Yes.
Where are you guys right now? Do you talk? Where are you?
We talk about sound and fury signifying nothing. Shakespeare knew so much. He knew about our relationship, I guess.
But you talk.
Well, yeah. I mean, we do Star Trek conventions all the time. I just saw him, a month ago, or maybe 2 months ago, in Brighton, England. We did a convention together. But Brad on the mind. Bill likes to have some controversy going. It brings him more attention. The first time he went public with a controversy was when he claimed that we overlooked him when we had our wedding. He didn't get an invitation from us. He did we did send an invitation. And, particularly because our best man was Walter Koenig, who played Chekhov. And we asked Nichelle Nichols to be our matron of honor. But she said, I am not a matron. If Walter can be the best man, why can't I be the best lady? And we said, of course you are. And so, because we had our Star Trek colleagues as a part of the wedding party, we wanted to invite everybody involved with the whole cast, and we sent invitations to them. We sent one to Bill, and there could have been a mistake in the in the mail. But if he wanted to come, why didn't he call us? 2 months after the wedding, he goes on YouTube and rants and raves about George having some psychosis, deliberately ignoring him. We were absolutely baffled. But then Brad and I were driving down Sunset Boulevard, and we saw a big billboard advertising William Shatner in Raw Nerves, his new talk show. And I said to Brad, that's why he made that hoo-ha about our not sending him an invitation.
Is he still the best Kirk for your money, or would some people give it to Chris Pine?
No, because, Kirk was created by Bill Shatner. And Bill has a singular quality about him. Yes, that ego is part of it. Captain Kirk is an egocentric guy, but he enjoys, people and being in the center of things. And he's a doer and an activist. And so, yes, Kirk was defined by Bill Shatner and his personality.
Well, you are an actor and an activist, and such a delight to talk to. I ran way over, George.
Oh, my apologies. I talk too much.
My apologies. I've been asking you too many questions. So lovely to meet you. Thank you so much. And we will look for Allegiance, the Broadway musical.
Thank you very much.
Right.
My legacy project.
Yes.